I mark my boundaries in steel and paper. A white SUV idled at my fence while the HOA president photographed my forest green gate and called it unsightly. I logged the time, filmed her notice on Sunset Glades letterhead, and slid the 1984 exemption with the county seal to the top of my binder. Before long, the cameras would show who loosened the latch and what physics did to her polished bumper. The heat was already standing up off the gravel when the white SUV coasted to a stop at my fence line. Sunlight slid along the bars of my forest green ranch gate, the first thing I welded after Marianne passed a line I could point to and say, "Here, this is mine." The window purred down. "Good morning," the woman said, sunglasses reflecting my boots and the dust on them. "I'm Karen Whitmore, president of the Sunset Glades HOA. She tipped her chin at the gate. "That is unsightly. It's inconsistent with our design integrity." I took my glove off slower than she liked. "Morning. This is Dry Creek Ranch, not Sunset Glades. It's visible from our entrance drive." A small smile, thin as a paper cut. "We have standards for public-facing structures." "Ma'am," I said, "my gate faces my pasture." Her phone made a soft camera click. Another. She angled the lens so the HOA monument across the road peeked into the frame, stacked limestone bronze letters polished like a trophy. I could smell something sweet from her AC, like lemons and brochures. "You'll receive a notice," she said. "You can submit a compliance plan to the architectural committee." "I won't," I said, "because I didn't join." She tapped her nails on the steering wheel measure for measure. "We'll see." I let the silence go as long as it needed to. Wind lifted a curl of hay twine on the post and set it down again. When the SUV pulled away, it did so neat as a signature tires barely crunching. Inside the truck, my glove box gave a banged-open complaint. I slid out the binder I keep for strangers with clipboards, survey maps, and plastic sleeves. The 1984 exemption clause with a gold county stamp sunk into the corner. The paper smelled like old copier and courthouse floor wax. I laid the parcel map on the hood, the sun warming the cheap laminate. Property line ran where I knew it would run. 3 feet inside my gate waited hinge grease dark under my knuckles. A dust tail on the road glittered and settled. Somewhere in the oaks, a mockingbird tried on a ringtone. I flipped my phone to video and walked back to the bars. June 19th. I said, voice steady, Dry Creek Ranch, gate steel and timber anchored within parcel 2187A. Private, not HOA jurisdiction. The camera caught the scuffs on my boots, the shade line where my hat brim ended, and the hinge that complained faintly when I pressed the gate an inch and let it fall closed again. A click at my shoulder made me glance over. Not another camera, just the sound a fly makes when it finally loses an argument with a screen. The afternoon spread itself. I took the binder and a Sharpie to the porch table where Marianne's coffee ring still darkened the wood. I wrote a fresh label on a tab, Gate Docs. I nested the exemption clause behind it, then added a new sleeve for photos. The pen smell, black solvent sweet, took me straight back to supply tents and forms that mattered. The gravel whispered again. The SUV had returned slower now, like a thought that didn't want to be finished. The window stayed up this time. A phone rose, tilted captured. I could almost hear the caption being composed. I met the moment at the fence. "You got a question I called, ask it out loud." Her window whispered down an inch. "We're neighbors," she said. "We all want what's best for property values." "Values don't mind fences," I said. "People do." She smiled without meaning it, put the window back up, and eased away. By late afternoon, the heat had a weight to it. I took the truck to the edge of the west pasture and retensioned a line of barbed wire where a mesquite limb had sagged through in the last storm. When I turned back toward the house, the sun threw off sparks on the gate latch. The soundscape was the one that had brought me here. Grasshoppers ratcheting diesel, cooling a single cowbell clunking where Blue nosed the water trough. No screen noise, no HOA minutes, just the steady tick of a life that still fit. On the way in, I saw it yellow paper flapping at my post like a skittish bird. Someone had used a piece of blue painter's tape and the adhesive had started to sweat off already. I peeled it gently. "Notice of violation," it said in bold, and then Sunset Glades Homeowners Association in a soft, trying-to-be-friendly script. Below a paragraph about public-facing sightline harmony and architectural cohesion, and at the bottom a line that snagged the eye remedy within 10 days to avoid further action. I held it up to the light, saw my pasture through the further action. The paper smelled like toner and citrus hand gel. Somebody had proofread it twice and still missed the comma splice. "All right," I said to no one and to the camera lens in my phone. Documenting. I set the notice on the porch table beside the parcel map and took 3 photos, wide-medium detail of the letterhead. Then I flattened the map with my palm, lined the exemption clause beside it, and framed a shot with both, and the gate blurred behind. I could almost hear Luke say, "You can be quiet, or you can be sloppy, but not both." The phone buzzed against my thigh. A text from an unknown number. Friendly reminder. Compliance consult available. KW. I let the screen go dark. The sky had a fresh nickel edge to it now, the light going long down the road. I recorded again, making my voice as dull as a docket. Miles Carter, private ranch land. Received HOA notice taped to my post. Sunset Glades letterhead, no jurisdiction. I kept the gate in the background, the hinge and the weld seam that still made me proud because it hadn't been pretty the first pass and I'd ground it back, started over, and laid the bead clean. Marianne would have said, "That's more like you." The SUV came back a third time at dusk, headlights off, just the DRLs glowing like a pair of polite eyes. It idled by the entrance sign, then pulled closer at the angle people use when they want you to feel watched without saying they're watching. I stepped to the bars so she could see me see her. "If you have something official," I said, "mail it." The window edged down. "We're all on the same team," she said. "Let's find a solution that works for everyone. I already found mine." I said, "This gate." She didn't laugh. "You'll hear from us." I just did. Her lips tightened. The SUV rolled back to the monument sign and parked there a while, half in the HOA world, half in mine, as if it couldn't decide which air to breathe. Mini cliff. Inside, I stacked what needed stacking. The yellow notice went into a sleeve. The photos printed and slid in front of it. I added a fresh divider for contact log and wrote down times 9:12 a.m. Introduction, 1:38 p.m., second pass, 6:04 p.m., third pass. Message. The pen scraped slightly over a nick in the wood where I'd once dropped a wrench. I ran my finger over the nick and felt the familiar cheap mercy of a routine. On the hall table, a small pile of certified envelopes sat like geese at a rest property tax feed co-op statement, a catalog that refused to stop coming. I set the HOA notice beside them, not among them. I don't mix fiction with bills. I stepped back out as the day exhaled. The heat's hand let go of the fence. Across the road, the limestone sign for Sunset Glades held gold light in the chisel marks. I could hear distant laughter, some family breaking out a new grill, the metallic clink of tongs, a sizzle that carried clean over the ditch. The air held a thin ribbon of charcoal and sauce that made the pasture smell like July ball games and fresh-cut grass, even though I had neither nearby. I lifted the latch and swung the gate 2 inches, listening to the hinge talk. "You and me," I said. "We keep what's in and what's out the way it ought to be." I filmed one last time, close on the notice sleeve, then wide so the gate marched clean across the frame. "This is private ranch land," I said, and let the gate fall closed. The bar met the post with a soft, right-sounding kiss. On a fresh tab in the binder, I wrote a label I didn't need yet and hoped never to need at all. The Sharpie bled a little through the cardstock, crashed into my ranch gate. I slid it behind the other tabs like tucking a bad dream under a bed so it couldn't trip you in the dark. A soft thump on the porch made me turn. A plastic sleeve had been dropped against the door. The masthead peered through the cloudy cover Sunset Sentinel, and below it a headline I could read without opening border eyesore. The sleeve smelled faintly of pool chemicals and grape popsicles. Somewhere down the road, a child whooped and a dog barked twice, bored with its own echo. I didn't open the sleeve. I set it next to the binder and watched the last of the light catch the brass of the latch. The day had been full of words that wanted to be laws. Out here, the hinge spoke louder. The Sunset Sentinel showed up, folded neat in its plastic sleeve ink, already bleeding at the edges from the damp. I shook it out on the porch rail. The lid photo was my gate, but cropped so tight the boundary pins blurred into background grass. A caption read, "Sightline disruption raises concerns." I muttered to the empty yard. "Disruption, huh? Been standing there 2 years without bothering a fly." The SUV idled at the cattle guard again. I heard the faint click of a phone shutter float across the heat like a cicada note. Karen didn't wave. She just held her device up, framed the shot, then rolled slow down the lane. Inside, I laid the newsletter across the dining table next to my lot survey. The cicadas rasped through the screens. I pulled the county ordinances binder from the shelf, the cover curled from years in the truck cab. With a pen, I scribbled margin notes, arrows, pointing from statute numbers to my parcel map. My handwriting slanted like fence posts after rain, but it was legible enough. The phone rang. Old wall unit with a cord long enough to stretch to the porch. Dry Creek Ranch. Miles Carter. A young male voice said, Mr. Carter, County Zoning. We've had a complaint, unauthorized barrier across an access corridor. I exhaled. That barrier is my front gate. Caller alleges it obstructs community sightlines. Sightlines aren't in the deed. I flicked through pages until I found the exemption clause with the county seal. I can send the survey with stamp. He hesitated. Email works. So I scanned the map with my phone, attached the PDF's survey exemption, and 3 fresh date-stamped photos I'd taken that morning. I typed the subject line, Parcel 2187A, no violation. Before hitting send, I added a note. Fence and gate in place since June 2017. Within property lines not HOA jurisdiction. A bead of sweat traced down my forearm as I clicked send. Minnie Cliff. By evening, the heat lifted only a little. I hauled a ladder to the oak by the gate. In one hand, I balanced a trail cam the size of a paperback, the other gripped a hammer. The bark smelled of resin. Luke had told me once, if they want evidence, you give them better evidence than they can twist. His voice stuck in my ear as I cinched the strap. The red LED blinked when I tested it. A good sign. It would wake whenever headlights or sneakers crossed its eye. The gate hinge groaned softly, a sound I'd learned to measure the day by. Tonight, it seemed sharper, like it knew it was being watched. Karen's SUV cruised past again slower, then sped up when she saw me with the ladder. I waved. She didn't. I climbed down, wiped my palms, and leaned the ladder on the fence line. All right, buddy, I told the camera. Catch me the truth. Night insects chirred a different orchestra than the daytime cicadas. I poured a glass of iced tea, sat at the desk, and refreshed my inbox. There it was. Subject records received no violation. Dear Mr. Carter, your submitted documents are on file. No violation found. Case closed. I smiled, despite myself. I printed the email warm paper sliding out of the machine. I slipped it into a clear sleeve, then into the fresh binder section labeled Gate Docs. The binder thudded when I closed it heavier than yesterday. I whispered to the quiet room, No violation. Hear that? Marianne. The ceiling fan ticked the only reply. Before dawn, the world smelled of wet dirt and mesquite. I walked out in slippers, the gravel biting a little. The trail cam's LED blinked once, logging me. Something white was wedged between the bars of the gate, an envelope corner crimped like someone had shoved it fast. I pulled it free. Compliance printed bold across the flap. The cicadas hadn't yet started their racket, only the hush of early morning air holding its breath. Luke rolled up at sunup boots powdered with Calacea thermos dangling from his fingers. He didn't bother with hello. He handed me a dented enamel mug and said, If she's building a paper trail, you build a better one. Morning to you too, I said. Coffee steamed between us, smelling like burnt toast and resolve. He squinted toward the gate. Trail cam do its job. It blinked at everything except the truth, I said, thumbing my phone awake. But last night it caught a sleeve. White. Right up against the latch. Show me, he said. We leaned on the west fence where the hay rope smell lived, my phone screen bright in the morning shade. I scrubbed through Clip's headlights, drifting past a stray cat practicing confidence, then the frame I'd saved. A white sleeve, a flash of polished sunglasses like a slick pebble, then a hand grazing the latch plate. Luke whistled softly. Freeze it. Zoom. I pinched the screen. The pixels fuzzed, but sharpened around a shape. Bolt cutters, I asked. Smaller, he said, like a ratcheting wrench. So, not a random passerby, I said. Luke took out a pocket notebook and a stubby pencil. Timestamp 02:17 a.m., I said. He wrote the numbers like he meant to frame them. This is not a game of gotcha, he said. It's a ledger. You keep it straight, you win. I nodded, swallowed coffee. I'm tired of reacting. Then stop, he said. We're going to structure your defense. Incident report, backup camera warning placard. Quiet and clean. He tapped the binder I'd brought out. And that. The barn bay smelled of diesel and hay twine. We set the binder on a bale. I flipped to Gate Docs, slid last night's printouts forward. Luke skimmed them, eyes moving quicker than his drawl. Parcel exemption, county, no violation. Good. Now you go talk to Rhodes. Informal, I asked. Informal on paper, he said. There's a difference. Deputy Rhodes remembered me from a different dust. He sat behind a scuffed counter at the substation pen, tapping a slow tempo. Lost dog flyers drooped on the bulletin board behind him, sun faded into ghosts. Mabel, no collar. Reward, blue healer. Carter, he said, standing to shake my hand. Heard you got HOA perfume on your doorstep. It's a strong scent, I said. Lemon and entitlement. He chuckled. What do you got? I laid out the county email clearing me the newsletter and my photos of the notice on letterhead. Then I set my phone down, cued to the trail cam clip. He watched the bright fleck of sunglasses and the hand at the latch. He said, mouth flattening. You want me to rattle sabers? No, I said. I want a record. Words in the right book. He pulled a form from a drawer. Informal incident report, he said, and wrote as he asked. Date times. You present trespass damage attempted tampering, I said. Property boundary harassment if you've got a slot for that. He found a line and wrote it. Harassment property boundary, he said, slow enough that the pen could think about it. You want me to reach out to her? Not yet, I said. I want the timeline to talk before anyone else does. He nodded. I'll log it. And if that latch disappears, you call, not text. I signed the bottom, the ballpoint catching slightly on the paper grain. Rhodes slid a copy across to me. Take this for your binder, he said. Not because it'll scare anybody, because it'll outlast them. On my way out, I paused at the board and read a flyer twice I didn't need to read once. Somebody was missing a calico named Peach. I thought about how long a name can call without an answer. Back at the west fence, Luke had the ladder leaned against the oak. We're going to hide another eye, he said. He held up a second trail cam. Inside the post cap. No one looks up when they think you're looking down. Paranoid? I said. Prepared, he said. Now hush and hand me those screws. We worked quiet. The wood smelled warm where the sun had started to press. The camera settled into its pocket like it had always lived there. Luke tightened the last screw, then wiped his hand on his jeans. Give me your phone, he said. He paired the new camera to my app, naming it Gate Post A. Set to push alerts, he said. No vibration. Your pocket doesn't need to jump when you do. We dropped to the ground, dust puffing at our ankles. I hung a fresh placard on the inside of the gate. Private livestock enclosure. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I could see the reflection of the words in the SUV's gloss even though it wasn't there. That's how presence works in small towns. You feel cars that might be coming because yesterday they did. Luke sipped coffee. You ready to be boring? It's my best quality, I said. Good, he said. Boring wins hearings. Who said anything about a hearing? You did, he said, flicking his eyes at the binder. The minute you started labeling tabs. We both laughed, short and honest. The laughter felt like a gear finally finding its teeth. My phone pinged. A push alert, gate post, A motion detected. We looked at each other, then at the screen. The clip opened to a tight shot of the latch. A hand entered tentative. The nails were manicured pale, a ring catching sun. The wrist turned. The latch rattled once, twice, not casual, not confident. The sleeve white again brushed the camera's sightline. A pair of sunglasses flashed. The frames were big reflective, and for a split second my own gait was mirrored in them. Luke raised his eyebrows. Testing, he said. She's learning my hardware, I said. She's teaching you her timeline, he said. She's anxious in daylight. Means night was braver than she thought. I saved the clip to the Gate Docs folder, then made a second copy to an old USB stick I kept for weather radios and bad years. I snapped a still and printed it at the house ink lines, building her out of dots until the sleeve and the ring and the edge of the latch looked like they'd always been ink. I slid the print into a sleeve and pressed the air out gently like you do with freezer bags you plan to trust. Next step, Luke said. I'll keep it formal, I said. Keep it cleaner than formal, he said. Keep it true. We drove to the courthouse because certain papers prefer certain air. The lobby smelled like floor wax and old coffee. On the bulletin board beside the metal detector, a kid's hand-drawn poster announced a bake sale for the marching band. I pinned a mental note to buy a brownie and forget it in my truck until it became a fossil. I stopped by records to double-check my exemption clause copy. June wasn't at the window, but a younger clerk with an Aggie ring scanned the barcode and printed me a fresh certified copy for $2. Stamp still looks pretty, he said. It'll have to, I said. Rhodes' incident report sat warm in my binder. The pages made a soft slap when I turned them. Outside, the noon sun hammered every flat surface into glare. The courthouse flag hung limp as a tired sigh. Back home, the barn bay shade felt like mercy. Luke tapped the new camera feed with his knuckle. Leave the lawyer out of your mouth for one more day, he said. But put her number in your pocket. I know who to call, I said. He capped his thermos. Then call me when the next dumb thing happens, he said. It always does, I said. Only to people who own fences, he said, and grinned. Which is to say, everybody. He drove off tires, making that comforting gravel whisper. I stood where his dust hung breathing diesel and hay and the faint sweetness from the mesquite blossoms. The gate looked ordinary. Ordinary is a lie slow people tell to fast days. It was a loaded word, and the hinge knew it. My phone buzzed once, then landed a new email. The subject line stacked itself like a brick formal compliance request. Inspection proposed livestock hazard. I opened it. The body offered times and included bullet points about behavioral impact on neighboring families and closed with, "We appreciate your cooperation." At the bottom, Karen Whitmore CC'd her address pristine like nothing could ever stick to it. I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred into a gray shape. I was done standing still. I just planned to do my moving where the footprints mattered. Morning walked its fingers across the apron of gravel and stopped at 2 empty holes where my lock used to be. No metal crumbs, no bent hasp, just clean circles in the latch plate as if someone had unthreaded the hardware and pocketed it on the way to breakfast. "Well," I said to the quiet that's tidy. I took stills with my phone wide, medium, close, then eased 2 loose screws I found in the grass into a sandwich bag. The bag crackled like a small confession. The hinge gave a doubtful groan when I pushed the gate an inch and let it settle back. An SUV pulled up at an angle I recognized. Karen stepped out posture ironed, and a man in khakis followed sunglasses reading our reflections. His clipboard corners were dog-eared the way field tools should be. "Mr. Carter," he said, neutral as a weather report. "That's me. I'm Daniel Rivera with Municipal Code Compliance," he said. "We received a request for a site observation regarding potential livestock hazards." Karen offered an almost smile. "It's just a quick look," she said, "for everyone's peace of mind." I kept my own voice level. "Your peace seems to keep you busy." Rivera cleared his throat and looked at his form. "This is a site observation notice," he read. "Non-enforcement visit. Notes on visibility containment sanitation." "Then, let's do notes," I said. I pointed at the placard inside the gate. "Private livestock enclosure. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Next to it, the printed containment code I'd laminated last year sections highlighted. Fence height and strength exceed minimums. Warning signs posted at intervals. Karen's gaze slid to the holes where the lock should have been. "Gate appears unsecured," she said crisply. "It was secured as of last night," I said. "And the missing hardware is in this bag because I like to keep evidence in one place." Rivera's pen paused. "You're alleging tampering, I'm describing holes," I said. "And the fact that they weren't here yesterday." He made a note. "Livestock type. Brahman crosses and 2 yearlings," I said. "All registered. Vaccinations current." I held up a slim folder vet records with last month's date signature in blue. He scanned, nodded. "Animals appear calm," he said. "Eyes on Blue, who stood under the oak like a parked truck with opinions." Karen folded her arms. "Calm, for now," she said. "There are children near this entrance." "There are boundaries near this entrance," I said. Rivera shifted his weight. "I'm marking no immediate hazard observed," he said carefully. "I will recommend a follow-up with animal control to verify records." "Let's not wait on a recommendation," I said. "I'll schedule a voluntary animal control inspection today." Karen blinked like I'd skipped a script line. "Voluntary, paper." First I said more to myself than her. Rivera tore the yellow copy of his form and handed it to me. "For your records, sir." The paper smelled faintly of toner and a morning that had decided to be administrative. The county office hummed the way fluorescent lights hum when they know they have you. I stood at a counter scarred by a generation of elbows and slid my ID across to the clerk. The nameplate read S. Millard, Animal Control. "Morning," he said. "What brings you in?" "Voluntary inspection," I said. "Livestock, containment, fencing, water, the whole checklist. Today, if possible." He lifted an eyebrow. "Most folks come in when they're told." "I prefer to keep my own calendar," I said. He flipped a laminated schedule. 2 o'clock, he said. "I'll bring a checklist and a camera. Expect 30 minutes unless we get chatty." "I'm not chatty," I said, then added, "because truth likes seasoning unless I need to be." He grinned. 2 o'clock then. Back at the ranch, I taped the appointment notice inside the gate with blue painter's tape, same kind they'd used for their violation. The rectangle looked official even before the ink dried. I took a photo second angle, then a third with my boot toe in frame to anchor scale. My phone buzzed an email that opened with the syrupy tone I'd begun to recognize. We appreciate your cooperation. It was from the HOA address CC Karen Whitmore politely requesting I temporarily relocate bulls to a more secure location pending review of their behavioral impact. I read it twice and tasted aluminum. I replied with one sentence, voluntary inspection scheduled with County Animal Control at 1400 today. Records available upon request. Then I let my cursor hover over send just long enough to give myself credit for not typing anything I'd regret. At 1:58, Millard's county truck rolled to a stop. He stepped out with a clipboard and a grin that took years off the job. "Afternoon," he said. "Smells like mesquite and paperwork." "Best we've got," I said. He walked the line like he was reading Braille with his boots posts, tension corners, the weld seam. I'd ground back and done right. He checked the water tanks, peered at feed storage, looked blue in the eye like men do when they respect weight. "Records?" he asked. I handed over the vet card brand registration and last month's deworming log. He checked boxes, the pen tapping cadence. "Containment," he said, watching the hinge as I swung the gate a palm's width and closed it gently. "Lock," he said, glancing at the holes. "Removed," I said. "Documented." He made a note. "Hardware removed, owner bagged screws." He snapped a photo of the plate, then one of my placard. "Inspection complete," he said, finally stamping the form with a satisfying thunk. "No deficiencies observed." "Mind if I tape that too?" I asked. "Please do," he said. "It looks good against green paint." Karen's SUV cruised by as Millard walked back to his truck. She slowed, rolled her window an inch. "Everything in order?" she asked, voiced the shape of a smile that couldn't help itself. "Yes, ma'am," Millard said. "Mr. Carter runs a tighter ship than most parks, I see." Her window went back up like a drawbridge. The SUV idled, then moved on. Millard shook my hand. "If anything else goes missing on that hardware, call me directly," he said. "And don't relocate your bulls unless you want to give them a vacation." "I'll pass on the vacation," I said. He laughed, waved, and left the kind of dust that doesn't feel like insult. Evening pressed a cooler palm against the fences. The inbox dinged again. HOA, follow-up on safety concerns. The email repeated its request for relocation and added a link to Community Dialogue Night. I printed it because paper weighs more than suggestion, slid it into Gate Docs, and wrote the date along the margin. Then I texted Luke inspection done. Clean. Taped notice. Paper first. He replied a minute later. Good. Keep your voice in the documents. Let them raise theirs in the room. I stood under the oak and listened to the light go soft. Headlights whispered along the county road and slowed as if curiosity had brakes. Blue took a step closer to the bars, calm, but large enough to make physics nervous. His breath fogged the cooling air in small, polite clouds. Easy, I said to him and to everything else. The lights idled a long beat, then rolled on. The holes in the latch plate looked wider in dusk. The alarm on my phone chirped the way it does for weather and trespass, two sounds that make the same muscle tighten. I thumbed it open to the live feed. The front gate wide like a held door. Blue already nosing the gravel as if the morning had asked him a question. I was halfway down the steps before the second ping hit boots unlaced, shirt tugged wrong. Heat was already moving in a shimmer over the apron. Neighbor curtains trembled like moth wings. Karen's white SUV sat crooked by the monument sign driver's door, yawning, her purse parked on the hood like she'd set it down as a placeholder for cents. The latch plate was bare again. Clean holes, no shards. Of course, I said, breath short. Her voice startled the dust. I was just checking the signage. She stood with one foot over my line hand up like she could push the morning back. You removed the lock, I said. It was loose. She tried to smile, but her eyes didn't join. You know how these things can fall off? Locks don't fall off, I said. Behind me, hoofs scrape a low exhale. Blue's ears tipped forward, a steady metronome deciding the beat. Back up, I said, not loud, not soft. She took a step the wrong direction to the side, not a wayphone rising. A tiny red dot blinked in my periphery. Gate post A was watching. Karen, I said. She clapped briskly like shooing a lab out of a kitchen. Shoo. Blue didn't know that word. He lowered his head, considered the mirror on her SUV, and gave it a nudge that wasn't a nudge. Metal thumped hollow. The mirror folded, then snapped back like it regretted the decision. Hey, she yelped, retreating to the sign. Gravel popped under her heels. Back away, I said. My voice stayed level the way I'd taught it to in old years. Blue swung his attention to the front fender. The two younger bulls, feeling brave under his certainty, flanked him like punctuation. He rammed once and the hood caved the way a pie tin caves when you take it personal. Steam ghosted up. Karen's phone jumped in her hand. "He's loose." "He's not," I said. "You opened a gate that wasn't yours." She took another shot with the phone, then realized the frame was nothing but her panic and a crumpled car. She backed all the way to the subdivision, curb breath coming in high strings. Seconds later, bulls wrecked her SUV. I didn't say it out loud. I heard it anyway, like a caption from a future I didn't want but had prepared for. I thumbed Deputy Rhodes before I thumbed anyone else. "Front gate tampered," I said. "Vehicle damaged. No injuries." "I'm en route," he said. "You have footage." "3 angles," I said, "and the inspection log taped inside the gate." I called Millard next. He answered on the second ring. "You ahead of me," he said. "I like that." "Bring your clipboard," I said. Luke's truck followed the logic of a day like this and rolled in without being asked. He shut the door with his hip and looked at the scene like a fence judge looks at a blown post. "Well," he said, "that's a sermon. Keep me from saying the wrong thing I said. That's my second best quality," he said. "What do we got?" I held up the phone. The cam clip showed Karen sliding a ratchet into the hasp groove, quick, confident turns lock disappearing like a coin trick. She tossed it into the grass, then reached through and rattled the bars, testing the weight of her own story. Luke watched without commentary. When it ended, he handed the phone back. "Paper, then mouth," he said. Rhodes' cruiser slid to a halt, lights off, posture on. He stepped out, notepads already in hand. "Everyone's safe," he said. He looked me in the eye, then at Karen, then at the bulls who had decided the SUV was less interesting now that it stopped arguing. "Safe enough," I said. Karen straightened. "Your animal." He held up a hand. "Ms. Whitmore, I'll hear you in a minute. Mr. Carter walked me through. I kept it bone simple. Gate was secure last night. This morning alarm pinged. Gate open lock missing. Miss Whitmore on property line. Bulls remained inside enclosure. They contacted her vehicle at low speed. No public roadway breach. "Show me the lock," he said. I showed him the bare plate, the bagged screws, the clean holes. He bent close, pen tapping his lip. "No pry marks," he said. "Fastener removal." He glanced at the camera tucked under the post cap. "You caught the method I hit play." He watched the ratchet do what ratchets do and let out a small breath. "All right," he said. He turned to Karen. "Ma'am, I was conducting a community safety check," she said. "Children." "On property you don't control," Rhodes said. "Please step back from the gate." Millard pulled in with county decals behaving like a small parade. He walked the line. Checked my inspection log still taped inside, county stamp bright. "No changes since Thursday," he said loud enough for anyone with ears. He knelt to eye the hinge, then stood and wrote something that sounded like impeccable, even if he didn't say it. Karen's voice pitched up. "His bulls are dangerous?" Millard looked at Blue like a man looks at a thunderhead. "Animals respond to stimuli, ma'am," he said. "Best way to keep them calm is to not open things." Luke coughed into his fist to hide a smile. I didn't bother. Neighbors edged closer to the invisible line propriety draws, arms folded, phones half raised. Curiosity wrapped in concern. Rhodes measured distances with his boots, then wrote in his book. "Unlawful tampering," he said quietly, mostly to the paper. "Reckless interference. Property damage." "To your own property," he added, "for the record." Karen's jaw worked. "This is harassment." Rhodes didn't look up. "Being recorded doing a thing and then being told you did it is not harassment," he said. "It's called accountability." A tow truck arrived and sighed its winch into motion. The SUV's front end lifted bent metal, complaining in rounded syllables. Steam curled like a tired flag. The operator kept his face neutral the way men do when an audience has expectations. "Do you want to press charges?" Rhodes asked me, tone professional, not fishing. "I want boundaries respected," I said. "And the record straight." "Paper first," Luke murmured like a prayer. Rhodes nodded. "We'll file," he said. "Miss Whitmore, you'll get notified. If you have counsel, give them my card." She swallowed. "He has wild animals." I gestured at the taped inspection log. "Inspected? Last week," I said. "Signed. Passed." Millard added, "And the enclosure exceeds minimums. If they'd left the pasture, we'd be having a very different conversation." They didn't. Her eyes went to the neighbors, then the cameras, then down. For a flicker, the day looked heavy in her hands. The tow truck clanked the last chain home and pulled away. Heads turned, phones rose, curtains flicked. The air tasted like hot iron and embarrassment. When the dust settled, literally a thin crust of it on my boots, Luke and I retaped the inspection print so it sat square. Level, he said, eyeing it like a picture frame. I scrubbed the morning from my hands at the spigot and found it still on my skin. Adrenaline makes its own residue. I took one more wide shot of the gate and the bare plate and the bulls beyond just grazing, unmoved by human agendas. Lawyer Luke asked casual as weather. Yeah, I said. Decision made. Good, he said. Don't aim at her. Aim at her paper. I nodded. The neighbors had retreated to their porches, and the sound of someone's screen door slapped twice the universal punctuation mark for "that's enough" for one morning. I didn't sleep so much as turn pages of the day until they softened. At first light, a shadow crossed the porch. A heavy envelope slid under the door and stopped against my boot. Legal letterhead. The kind of serif that wants you to feel smaller. I picked it up. Across the top, formal hazard review requested. The coffee hadn't even bloomed yet. I set the envelope beside the binder and heard my voice steady the way I needed it to be for the next part. Paper first. Folding chairs squeaked like field mice as people shifted row after row until the HOA clubhouse looked overfilled and underprepared. The projector in the back gave off a low electrical hum, the kind that makes you swallow twice. Styrofoam cups of coffee steamed on a table beneath a corkboard full of lost cat notices and mulch reminders. Someone whispered behind me, "Did you bring the footage?" Sam Griffin stood at my elbow in a navy suit that didn't try too hard. He leaned close. "You don't have to say much," he said. "Let the tape say it. I've got the binder," I said, tapping the spine. My tabs looked like a rainbow of restraint. Up front, the board sat in a line behind a folding table, name placards tented like tiny barricades. Karen was at the far end back, straight enough to pin a dress shirt to. The fluorescent lights put a chalky sheen on everything. The board president cleared his throat into a microphone that clicked like a cheap pen. "We'll call this meeting to order," he said. "We are here to discuss recent safety concerns," and Sam rose. "Before you continue," he said, "voice level. I'm Sam Griffin, counsel for Mr. Miles Carter. I'd like to read a statement of intent for the record." He held up a page with county stamp imprinted through. "The Sunset Glades HOA has no jurisdiction over parcel 2187A, also known as Dry Creek Ranch. The parcel is subject to a 1984 exemption clause recorded with the county." He tapped the line where the seal shone like an old coin. "Any further attempt to regulate or harass the owner will be treated as a violation of state law and pursued accordingly." A murmur moved through the room, a low tide. Karen's lips pressed thin. The projector coughed itself into life. Someone at the back called, "We're ready." The screen went from blue to image my gate pre-dawn, the ratchet glinting in a neat, damning arc. The room quieted the way rooms do when truth walks to the front. A woman near the aisle covered her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. On the screen, Karen slipped the lock free, tossed it into the grass, and rattled the bars. The clip jumped Angle's gate post. A catching the same move from above. Then, daylight bulls moving like weight had learned to trot the mirror, folding the steam. A dad in gym shorts said, "That's the HOA president's car." His voice had astonishment and something like embarrassment mixed into it. A mother stood shaking. "You told us his animals were loose," she said, turning toward the table. "You told me my kids weren't safe at the bus stop." Karen gripped the edge of the table. "This is out of context," she said. "I was in context," Sam said, is precisely what the video is. I set my binder on my knees and kept breathing measured. The projector fan whirred on. When the lights came up, the clubhouse air felt overbreathed. The board president shuffled papers like he could neaten the day. "We appreciate the clarity," he said, eyes not meeting anyone too long. "Given these developments, our legal counsel recommends you stop," someone said from the back. Laughter, then a hush that wasn't unkind, just tired. Sam stood again. "We are formally requesting immediate injunctive relief in county court," he said. "We'll file this afternoon." Karen's chair squeaked as she stood. "This is a witch hunt," she said. Voice brittle. "He's made everyone." "I didn't make you cut my lock," I said finally. It came out even like a fence post driven to depth in one clean run. She pointed at me. "You put those bulls there to intimidate people." "I put them in a pasture to graze," I said. "That's what pastures are for." A local reporter with a press badge the size of a playing card lifted her hand. "Mr. Whitmore, do you maintain that the livestock were loose?" she asked. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a hinge trying to find its pin. The board president swallowed and leaned into his mic. "The board will take a brief recess," he said. "Please remain seated." We stepped into the hall where the fluorescent buzz felt louder because the carpet didn't. Sam grinned sideways. "You're doing fine," he said. That was one sentence longer than I wanted, but it was a good sentence. "I like complete thoughts," I said. He patted the folder under his arm. "Judge Colson has seen worse days." Back in the room, the board returned with new paper. The president's voice shook a little like a flag in light wind. Effective immediately, he said Ms. Whitmore is suspended from all HOA duties pending review. A wave of sound rolled through the room, surprise, some relief. A few claps that turned into many. Karen stood so fast her chair lost its footing and scissored. She righted it face pale and fixed and walked the aisle with her chin up. Two people reached out automatically as she passed, then retracted their hands like they'd touched a hot pan. The door thumped once behind her. Later that week, the courtroom smelled like paper dust and wintergreen from old floors. Judge Colson had a rancher's hands big-knuckled patient. He listened to Sam read the statement again, then listened to the clip without sound, eyes narrowed as if the pixels had a flavor. Karen's attorney made an argument that tried to be smooth and came off slick. The judge folded his hands. "Injunctive relief is granted," he said each word like a nail tapped just so. "Ms. Whitmore, the board and any agents are prohibited from entering Mr. Carter's property, issuing notices, or contacting him outside counsel." His gavel wasn't dramatic, it was practical. The sound still felt like a door closing. Outside on the courthouse steps, Sam breathed out. "That's the kind that holds," he said. I nodded and didn't say much. The sun had that clear fall angle that makes edges honest. A neighbor I recognized from the clubhouse approached with a cardboard tray of coffees. "For you," she said, awkward smile. "We should have spoken up earlier." She handed me a cup that tasted like apology and community hall creamer. Back at the ranch, the late light made the weld seam on the gate look like a line someone had drawn with the right pen. I retaped the judge's order inside the bars, right next to the inspection pass, 2 pages that added up to a kind of quiet. At dusk, a small box sat on my porch. No return address, the weight of a deck of cards. Inside, a USB stick and a note written in ballpoint letters, sharp, careful. "You should have this." I plugged it into the old laptop that never goes online. A Zoom grid popped up faces I recognized from the folding table. Karen's voice had the easy glide people use when they think the microphone loves them. I figured if I push the right buttons, she said, maybe he'll slip up or the bulls will get loose. Either way, it's pressure. No one spoke for a moment on the recording. Then someone finally said, "Isn't that dangerous?" Karen laughed, small and wrong. "Insurance will cover it," she said. "Once the board has a paper trail, we can start the integration process." In the laptop's dark edges, my face looked older, then steadier. I ejected the drive and slid it into a new sleeve in the binder. The tab read USB board call. "Paper first," I said out loud to the empty room, and the gate hinge somewhere in the last of the light agreed. A basket waited on the porch like it had been carried in 2 hands that meant well. Brown eggs in a carton, a loaf of sourdough wrapped in a dish towel. Tucked under the twine, a card in careful cursive. "We're sorry we didn't speak sooner." I picked it up, thumbed the edge. The quiet around the ranch felt less empty with that basket on the step. Inside, I set the bread on the counter and let the eggs rest in the fridge door beside last week's milk. The card stayed in my pocket. The laptop blinked awake with the kind of screen that makes you squint. County Agenda posted that morning, draft zoning amendment. Carter Clause. The name made me exhale through my teeth. It wasn't a medal, but it was something that might outlive my gate hinge. Luke pulled into the drive with a cooler strapped in the bed, radio humming faint football static. He leaned against the porch rail like a man testing lumber. "You stood still," he said no hello. "Truth marched for you." I felt more like truth tripped me and dragged me a mile, I said. He smiled, rare as rain. "Still counts as forward." We sat on the porch swing, creaked steady. I poured him iced tea. He nodded toward the gate. "That weld you did held. But this ain't about steel anymore." "Paper, now," I said. "Paper and people," he said. "One without the other just burns." That afternoon, the inbox pinged. "Apology, Sunset Glades, HOA, Interim President, Marcus Dean." I clicked. "Mr. Carter, on behalf of the interim board, we regret the actions taken against you. We would like to open dialogue about better boundaries between HOA oversight and county exemptions." The phrase "better boundaries" made me laugh once not mean. Luke looked over my shoulder. They finally learned the word sorry. "Took 'em long enough." "They're trying," I said. "Trying is the first stage of learning not to repeat," he said. Second stage is keeping their mouths shut until they've listened. The phone buzzed. Candace on the line, voice brisk kind. Miles. Good news. County commissioners moving forward with the clause. Your exemption will be codified as precedent. Should prevent this circus from repeating. I breathed in slow. So, it sticks. It sticks, she said. One more vote in December, but momentum's on your side. Appreciate you, I said. You earned it, she said, then paused. Don't gloat. Nothing ages worse than victory laps. Luke nodded like he'd overheard. Smart woman, he said. Listen to her. Evening pulled us to the diner. Booth vinyl cracked, but forgiving waitress calling me Han like she meant it. Radio in the corner carried play-by-play from a high school game. The crowd noise in the background sounded like community stitched together. Luke dipped fry in ketchup, then pointed it at me. You welded a lock once. You remember what I told you? Don't rush heat, I said. Exactly, he said. You gotta mend slow. Mending's harder than welding. Welding hides seams. Mending shows you trust them to look. He slid a folded sheet across the table, a blueprint sketch of a plaque. Bronze, simple, Dry Creek Gate boundary, affirmed 2020-2021. My name wasn't on it, just the place. I traced the lines. You think it belongs? I think it says more than you could in a speech, he said. Time to mend, not just weld. Back home, the porch light hummed. I opened the laptop again. A new message blinked bold. Draft, bylaw. Revision, attachment, PDF. I clicked. The words scrolled formal and dry, but one line cut sharp, HOA authority limited by recorded exemptions. Enforcement prohibited where jurisdiction not granted. There it was, paper in black and white. Blue shifted in the pasture, lowing like punctuation. I leaned back in the chair, heard the creak, and thought maybe balance wasn't peace, but it was close enough. Saturday came in bright and brittle. Frost silvered the fence posts and made the grass crunch under my boots. The bull's breath hung in front of them like small gray flags that lifted and fell. I spread a drop cloth under the gate and set the new can of deep green beside a coffee mug gone cold. The first stroke of paint covered a year that had been louder than I ever wanted. The second stroke looked like intention. Luke showed up with a thermos and a quiet smile. Figured you'd beat me to it, he said. Figured you'd bring better coffee, I said. He poured and watched while I worked. The hinge took the color like it remembered it. When the last panel was even, I wiped the brush, lined up the brass plaque, and held it against the center crossbar. The letters were simple and honest. No trespassing ever. I tightened the bolts until the metal seated firm. Luke tapped the plaque with a knuckle. That's a sentence that keeps its own time. Short sentences do, I said. Across the road, a small knot of neighbors walked from the clubhouse with clipboards tucked under their arms. A new packet of bylaws was pinned to the corkboard over their pages, fluttering every time someone opened the door. I could see signatures stacking in columns through the window. Marcus Dean's truck pulled in slow. He climbed out with 2 paper cups and a folder under his arm. Brought the maps, he said, lifting the folder. And the second best coffee in the county. First is at the diner, Luke said. Third is in my thermos, I said. We laughed, soft and easy, and stepped to the tailgate. Marcus spread the subdivision plat and my parcel map side by side. The winter light made the lines look carved. He traced the boundary with a forefinger, careful not to touch the ink. We've added the opt-in language, he said. Transparent notices, public votes, no unilateral enforcement. Folks can choose what they belong to. Choice, I said. That's the part that was missing. He nodded. We've got a vote at 2. I'm not asking you to attend. I'll be here if you want to debrief, I said. Coffee is easier than microphones. He handed me a folded page from his folder. Dry Creek Ledger masthead across the top, print clean and black. The apology sat in the center. I acknowledged that my actions toward Mr. Miles Carter were inappropriate, unlawful, and led to unnecessary conflict. I apologized to Mr. Carter, the community, and the Sunset Glades HOA for breaching the trust placed in me. It was signed in ink that bled a little where the pen paused. Luke read over my shoulder and let out a low breath. Paper that says what mouths didn't. We'll frame a copy for the clubhouse, Marcus said. If that's all right. It's right, I said. I folded my copy and slid it into the folder in my mind that kept the other papers that had changed shape when we looked at them long enough. In the house above the desk where the binder lived, a new frame already hung. Inside was the county certificate that came with more stamps than words. Zoning amendment. Carter clause adopted. The seal embossed the paper like a thumbprint. I caught myself looking at it the way you look at a horizon when you finally stop scanning for weather. Marcus pointed to the frame. We passed it around at the commissioner's office, he said. Every person who touched it had something to say about gates and lines and how much quieter life is when those things are clear. Quiet is the goal, I said. Quiet and honest, Luke added. We took our coffee to the fence line. Blue, chewed-cut eyes, half-lidded steam lifting from his nostrils in an easy rhythm. Marcus watched him the way folks from subdivisions do when they realize large animals are just studying you back. He looks calmer, Marcus said. He's reflecting the room, I said. All rooms are bigger outdoors. The phone buzzed in my pocket. An email from the county clerk recorded amendment filed. The timestamp made my shoulders drop an inch. I turned the screen to Marcus. It's official, he smiled. Then I'll go make ours official, he left with a wave. Luke and I stood a while letting the paint set. The plaque caught a slice of sun and threw it back warm. A pickup slowed on this county road. The driver lifted 2 fingers off the wheel the way people do when there's nothing left to explain. By mid-afternoon, traffic gathered near the clubhouse. I stayed where I was and sanded a rough spot on the crossbar with a strip of paper until the green looked continuous. At 3, my phone chimed again. Marcus had sent a simple line, adopted. An attached photo showed neighbors raising hands, then lining up to sign. A little boy leaned into the frame grinning around a cookie. Behind him, the corkboard glowed with new pages. Luke tucked the thermos under his arm. You didn't just hold the line, he said. You drew a new one. Didn't draw it alone, I said. Nobody ever does, he said. We walked the fence one last time before the light quit. Frost was already forming again in the shadows. The bulls moved slow and sure, hooves making soft prints that the night would harden. I touched the plaque once more. It felt cool and right. When we reached the corner post, Luke paused and looked back. You ready to be boring again? He asked. I've never wanted it more, I said. The stars came up in their old places. Porch lights winked on across the road, and for the first time since I moved here, they felt like company instead of surveillance. I set the brush to soak and closed the paint can. The hinge gave one last small sound as I swung the gate and latched it. This time the lock felt like punctuation at the end of a sentence I was finally done writing. Inside, I slid the ledger apology into a clear sleeve, set it beside the county certificate, and closed the binder with a soft thud. The house smelled like cold air and brass polish and paint that would be dry by morning. Out in the pasture, Blue shifted and snorted once, then went still. It sounded like agreement. I turned off the porch light and let the dark belong to the night again. Sunlight caught the brass plaque on my repainted gate, and the faint sound of laughter drifted from the clubhouse where neighbors signed their names. The frost had melted, leaving the posts damp and shining a reminder that even cold mornings can give way. What I learned was simple. When we demand clear boundaries and hold steady, systems can be corrected and communities can mend. Trust doesn't return overnight, but it returns if tended like a fence line. Justice isn't loud, it's steady.